Just in case anyone missed the official video, the Everyman's Mech Tech Bible is now available in hardcover and ebook formats on Amazon. The link will be down where you'd expect. But anyway, enough with the consumerist cage rattling, and on with what you're really here for. Originally, this video was supposed to be just another of my quick jabs at the overall state of the world, specifically the First World, since that's where I live, and thus the part of the world with which I'm most intimately familiar. But, as seems to be a growing proclivity of mine as of late, that original thought bubble somehow blew up into a cosmic-scale rain cloud. In short, I was thinking about my own words from a recent Star Wars video I did where I briefly outlined the contradictions in both the Jedi and Sith codes, and in the end concluded that there's no such thing as balance in the Force. The reason I said this was because I understood the word balance to mean, as I assume most people know it to mean, equivalent amounts. But that's not how the Force works. Nor is it a matter of one side outright deleting the other, contrary to what both their codes and prophecies would tell you. No. To keep this as brief as possible, the Force is an energy cycle. Living beings are born and so generate new force that then gets recycled into the cosmic force pool and then transforms into new life via the living force, and so the cycle continues. The dark side is what happens when an organism attempts to co-opt this cycle's momentum for their own purposes. The same as how when political activists or religious zealots hijack a formerly tangible value-additive political or economic organization and work to bend its inner facilities around their narrative agendas. What does this have to do with the title? Well, to put it into sound-bittable format, my thesis is that the West's Achilles heel is its obsessive-compulsive drive towards optimization. This incessant, idealistic need to maximize our gains while minimizing out losses, powered by an incorrigible hunger for efficient growth that ultimately leads to us polarizing, deconstructing, destabilizing, and ultimately disintegrating the complex, interconnected fabric that makes our society work at all. In other words, the more we struggle towards the light, the further we'll inevitably fall into the abyss. In the mad rush to plunder heaven, we've catapulted ourselves over the celestial peak to land in the infernal valley of Avernus. Or, to put it in less lofty terms, imagine a natural ecosystem. We're all familiar with the great circle of life in the food chain. Prey eat the plants, predators eat the prey, predators die and get eaten by the plants, as well as bugs, bacteria, fungi, buzzards, and so forth. You get it. Well, an economy, and by extension, civilization, works essentially the same way. Each of the spokes on this wheel represents a pole on the socio-economic compass. Each and all are consistently attempting to maximize their own gains while minimizing the amount they have to exchange or compromise for it in the process. For example, in a perfect world, businesses want to charge their customers more money for less product, since producing things incurs costs, and they want to pay their employees less for more work. But on the opposite side of the coin, the employee wants to work less and get paid more, while the customer wants to pay less for more and or better products. Now imagine what would happen if the wolves and the deer spontaneously became sentient. Each would try to turn the system itself to their benefit. The wolves would engineer great pens to house the deer to make for easier hunts, while the deer would organize defensive militias to make themselves harder to isolate and pick off. Both sides need each other to survive, but both are perpetually at war since their interests are mutually exclusive, and their search for optimization, which is what the ability to reason ultimately facilitates, will result in total systemic collapse, just as it almost did in Yellowstone when we killed off the wolves, and just as it is presently doing to our own civilization. Our pursuit of perfection, and moreover the associated nihilism that comes from realizing our one-sided Sisyphean pact with life, has left us in ruins. In nature, since nature itself has no vested interest in the outcome, the result of these mutually exclusive interests colliding is a compromise, in the form of a great contest where those who are old, weak, sick, or incompetent are culled, their bodily essences recycled, while the survivors prosper in their absence. Note, I'm not saying we should pulp up the disabled or elderly and turn them into Soylent Green. My point is only that true meritocracy can only exist in a vacuum of sentient awareness. You might reasonably be asking yourself around this point what any of this has to do with Star Wars. Well, remember how I mentioned the contradictory codes of both the Jedi and Sith orders? Though there are and have been many ways to read and understand the flaws and failings of each, my read is that their core flaws reside in the contradictions between their codes' bodies and their final lines. For example, the Jedi Code, if read literally, is an ideological wish list, labeling not just all mortal shortcomings, but all facets of individual expression as well as moral impurities, stains on the Force's extracosmic tapestry. While the Sith, though more objectively grounded, still ultimately fail by refusing to acknowledge the real source of their power, the same as it is for our real-life dominant religious and ideological cults. Each and all assume man's mastery over nature, even while claiming to do the opposite. Everything that has a mind has a will. Everything that has a will has desire. Everything with desire will value things that fulfill that desire and will covet the power to obtain those things. Ergo, everything that has the capacity to think will, by sheer logical necessity, inevitably form attachments, and therefore cannot fully submit to the will of any higher power. Which brings me back to my point from before about the wolves. No ruling intelligence can ever be impartial, since it's not possible to have a mind without also having a will. So as soon as any intelligence gains control, or even partial control, over a system that it's a part of, it will invariably attempt to exert that power for its own benefit, rather than for that of the system uber ales. Basically, my point is that the essence of balance is not equality, but temperance. Not too much of any one thing, each to its own, and everything in its own place at its own time. At the risk of sounding pretentious, to quote from the Tao Te Ching, continuing to fill a pail after it is full, the water will be wasted. Continuing to grind an axe after it is sharp will soon wear it away. An excess of light blinds, an excess of noise deafens, an excess of condiments deadens the taste, and the lure of hidden treasure tempts one to do evil. Therefore the wise man attends to the inner significance of things and does not concern himself with outward appearances. Now I could go round and round for days dissecting every individual way in which our modern society has contradicted itself into the hereafter, but instead I'll just leave you with my personal summary of the whole list. We live in the most materially rich society the world has ever seen, yet we're more miserable than ever. We're told that we can be and do anything we want, but what we can want is strictly mandated by the powers that be. Just as there is no light without dark, there is no love without hate. Balance is not removal of the negative, but a temperate balance of two opposing extremes. Virtue is not a lever, but the fulcrum. But nature abhors a vacuum. So in a world of sheep, ruled by wolves, the only choice set before every lamb is whether to become a predator or to remain forever prey. I won't pretend to have the answer, and the more I think on it, the more I'm convinced there isn't one. But that's just my take on it, for whatever it's worth. Do with it what you will, and of course leave your own thoughts below. And while you're there, consider becoming a channel member, leaving me a tip, or checking out my books on Amazon. As said at the beginning, I just released the Everyman's Mech Tech Bible, and the Tao of Grimdark is well into the production pipeline for those who are more into that side of my content. But in any event, until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, gold buys slaves, steel buys power, but only blood buys freedom. Peace be upon you.